Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a very good friend of mine, someone I've known for many, many years, and we met with each other pretty well all around the planet. And Jostein wears many hats. He um, lives in a biodynamic community in Sweden, but he runs an organization called BERAS that does training and works with farmers all around the world. He he's also involved in the uh, Global Alliance of Organic Districts. These are dedicated organic districts, once again, all around the world. And he is involved in the Organic Food Systems, which is essentially a UN program to promote organic food systems all around the world. But I want to start with Sweden, where you live, and about the special community you live in, because I was privileged to be there 2 years ago in midsummer, and I just thought it was one of the most wonderful communities I've been to. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the biodynamic dairy and the other products, and just the sense of peace and joy in this community. So, Jostein, welcome, and please introduce yourself and tell everybody about the special place where you live in Sweden.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you for the introduction. And I must really say that friendship is what should guide our future now. Friends, that we are friends and really trust in each other and have the connectedness that we see globally. And also thank you for inviting me to speak to this fantastic initiative, the People Food Summit. It's really needed now in this world of democracy under threat and all the other things we are discovering. So I go directly where I am. This is so important that we are in a place, we connect to nature, we connect to people there. And I've traveled around the world, as you indicated, Andre, all the continents nearly, and the place I'm in now, I really enjoy. This is a biodynamic center of Scandinavia. We have a lot of farm, we have a lot of gardens, we have a lot of education activities for farmers, for young people, and also we have just restarted a dairy. Then we take the milk from about 100 cows from a biodynamic farm, and we take it into this dairy, and we produce very nice milk, and also we produce it in a way that people can understand, what we called slow processing and careful processing. So we take care what the cows produce for us. I mean, cows, they are a gift, and we should take care of them. And what they produce, we carefully process and give it to the people that live in this society. And about the society, it's about 10,000 people only, connected closely to Stockholm. Stockholm has about 2 million people, so there is an interesting market for the growers, for the dairy, and also we have the opportunity to be international. So in our place, we have something called the Youth Initiative Program. They come from all over the world, virtually from all the continents, young people every year to study this place and to interact with the local people. So this is a very special place on Earth. I would say there are many, many others of these places. The thing is that we have to appreciate where we are and interact with the people and interact with the landscape. So it's a kind of an anthroposophical center for Scandinavia with biodynamic farming. It's in its background, and people with interest in sharing both what they know about nature and how they interact with each other. So this is just great, Andre.
One of the, oh, actually quite a few things impressed me, but one of the things that really did impress me is, as well as the farms, is the amount of forest and biodiversity. For instance, the way your house is set and backs onto a forest, I just thought was really impressive. And I just love the way that you can actually have a productive farm environment, really wonderful housing, and high levels of biodiversity, you know, all together. It's not zero sum. It's actually, in your community, you bring it all together.
Yeah. In here in this landscape, some of you know this famous Swedish researcher and professor, that Linné. He made some good studies for the plants and all that. He came to this landscape and he said, this is where nature meet culture. This is where we can see that nature has been integrated in the system of farming, where we really take care of the zones between farmland and the wild nature, where we allow birds to come, where we allow the wild animals to thrive in this forest, also entering a little bit into the fields. And so this is kind of, yeah, it's one of the places in Scandinavia where we really did that, Andre. We really took the opportunity to invite nature into our home again. This is many places in the world we see that you have these farms, and then you have a very strict border to nature, and you don't have this intermediate zone where we can meet, where farm animals can look at the wild animals like moose and deers. The cows can have it. I don't know if they speak to each other, but they can see each other in this land. They can see the moose coming into their grassland. They can see the wild pigs, they are coming there. So, okay, they are our friends. So it's kind of an interaction. It's a silent meeting between the animals. It's a silent meeting between nature and culture. This, I think, I find something inspiring for us, also for the future, for other places in the world. I know we have fantastic places all over the planet. And I mean, people joining now the People Food Summit, they know that the place they live, they can do a lot. And they've already done a lot to let nature again into our lives.
Yeah, look, for me, it's very important. You can have a look. This is my farm at the back, and I've actually integrated nature right into my farming system. And, for instance, if people are into birds, come here, they see all these very rare and endangered species in my orchard. The birds don't know the difference between the rainforest that I've regenerated at the back of the farm and my orchard. And you actually see, I bring it into my house as well, like you have, so that we want nature to be integrated into our lifestyles. And I just want to say how important it is, because at the moment, with industrial agriculture, it's sort of like a war on nature. We're poisoning it. We're clearing it. Wildlife is seen as a problem. Anything that is not our monoculture, any other plant is a weed, and we've got to nuke it, instead of looking at systems where we can actually increase biodiversity, both in terms of productive and natural biodiversity. And in the end, just how can you say, we actually produce more resilient systems, and we produce better quality food, and we end up with higher biodiversity. And I suppose it's another one of your many hats, Jostein, is that you run an organization called Beres. You work with some of the, how can you say, the poorest farmers around the world, and work with them to improve their farming systems, improve their productivity, but also how to work with nature and nature-based systems. So would you like to explain your role there and the different countries that you've been working in?
Yeah, and this Beras started in the Baltic Sea area. We have here in the Northern Europe, we have the Baltic Sea, which is surrounded by approximately 11 countries. It's kind of a enclosed sea area that had really problems with the environmental status. There was too much nutrients coming out from agriculture to the sea, and the sea was slowly dying. So this is kind of a perfect example of what we call the disaster of the commons, that people put into, from every country, that put into more and more nutrients from agriculture, phosphorus and nitrogen every year. And the sea couldn't do that. So then we started a project called BERAS, which B then was for Baltic. So we had two projects, EU project for 6 years, where we investigated it. How could we do agriculture, taking care of all nutrients within the agricultural system, not importing and not exporting nutrients to the lakes and to the sea. And then we came up to the idea of what we call recycling agriculture, which is in fact the same as regenerating the soil and regeneration of human beings in contact with the landscape. But then we saw that the concept we did for farming, for food, and for society, these three elements all together, we had the regeneration of agriculture, we had the food to save the Baltic, and we have what we call local sustainable food societies. We saw that this was maybe a global concept. Then I went to Dominican Republic. I was invited by the Ministry of Agriculture to the Ministry of to the Dominican Republic, and then I talked about the Baltic Sea. They didn't know where it was, so then we had to change the BERAS name. We said that instead of the B for Baltic, we said building, ecological regenerating agriculture and society. So then we transformed it in one day. From I was supposed to have the speech. I had two speeches one day for some friends, and I used the word Baltic. They didn't understand a thing. And then when I presented it for the Department of Agriculture, I changed the B to building. So it was a global concept, what we're doing. And then I went around to Dominican Republic, fantastic people, fantastic countries, and also to Haiti. Haiti was very interesting. Very nice people, but they had just slashed and burned. So when you went from the border from Dominican Republic and over to Haiti, there were forests like you have in your background there in Dominican Republic, but the poor people in Haiti, they had to cut down everything to get food on the table. So then we discussed, they said they didn't have the resources to do anything else, but then we came to the conclusion the resources, we have two resources, people and nature. Take care of that, and then it could change. So following that, I was invited to India to do the same thing with my some new friends in India to discuss this global concept of agriculture, food, and societies. And then we still have a network all over the place. And then I went to China. So I went to all over the place to discuss and listen to people. And this is important for me now, that we had a concept here up in the north, in Scandinavia, but what we have to do is to listen and see, can we find common grounds? Can we connect and see if we can have a global development of a food system total?
Actually, listening, I just think is just so important. You know, everybody wants to be preaching, but you're right, listening is really important. When I used to be president of IFOAM Organics International, like you, I'd be invited to speak around the world. So I went there to speak, but the most valuable thing I learned, listen to the people and learn. And then you start to get a much better understanding of what the issues are and then how to resolve them. And the other thing I just loved what you said, you know, when you talked about going to Haiti and you've got two resources. nature and people. And that is so powerful to get rid of this idea of being impoverished. It's about how you work together. And I think that's well, use it as a segue to go into another one of your hats, something actually we're all involved in, and that's the Global Alliance of Organic Districts. I find that a really exciting concept, and you're very actively involved in that.
Yeah, this is more or less, Andre, the same development and the same story that I think we together all over the world now in the People Food Summit should work with. That we have ideas in one place of the world, but we should see how to listen to each other and see if we can have a kind of a common language. So this about organic district, it came from a fantastic place in Italy, southern Naples, called Cilento. 2004, these fantastic people in Cilento developed a concept of including people in a geographical area, a landscape, including them in a common goal to look at what could they do together to save the landscape, produce sufficient food, and include everybody living in a landscape. So we're not taking the administrative borders as decided by humans, we take a landscape to see where can we find common interest in a landscape. And so out of that, in 2004 in Cilento, fantastic people, we have Salvatore and the team there. Out of that, we said, we met with you and others and said, should we make, actually we met in South Korea with Jennifer and her team. And we said that, okay, we had some ideas here in the Northern Europe. Shouldn't we see if we can share that with other people and also listen to what to do? So then we created what we call the Global Alliance for Organic Districts. And this is now spreading around the world. So all over the place now, we are discussing with people, we are listening to people. How can we together build these inclusive communities? And it's always based on the organic principles of health, ecology, fairness, and care. And it's so important that we have some value-based development instead of only money and all that. We need, of course, money, we need resources, but as guiding us, we need these health, ecology, fairness, and care. So out of that, we built together the Global Alliance. And some of you went to China in September. And then in China, there are now plans for building 2 organic districts. And we have contacts also in South Africa. They would like to join there. And also in the Americas, where they, with some friends there, they would like to build these organic district, which is a landscape. It is taking nature into consideration, is inclusiveness for people, and also based on the organic principles.
You mentioned the organic principles, the 4 principles: health, ecology, fairness, and care. And for us in Regeneration International, that's the 4 principles that we use when we talk about whether something is regenerative or the opposite of regenerative, degenerative. Those 4 principles are the clearest and easiest way to decide, is something a benefit? Are we regenerating environment? Are we regenerating health? Or are we degenerating it? And I just love the clearness and simplicity of it. So we firmly promote these 4 principles, and we want to see them as the basis of regenerative agriculture. We actually see it's much easier for people to understand this than, say, for instance, where agroecology will have 13 principles plus 5 levels. This actually becomes a nightmare for farmers. But what is so wonderful about these 4 principles is they're universal, so easy to get across. And so what I'd like to finish on is the principle of health and organic food systems, the work that you're doing with that to promote organic food, because I think that is also so important to get consumers, in fact, everybody aware about how important organic food is for our health, for our environment. And
yeah, and this is kind of the basis for the what we call organic food system program. An organic food system program was created in 2015 in England. We came together there, a group of researchers and implementers to see what, and the question was, what could we do together for the world? Not could we do for ourselves. We posed the question in the middle of the room, what could we do together for the world? And then we said that we have some research that has been under communicated about the positive effect of organic food. It's been under communicated because companies like Syngenta and all these guys, they don't want to communicate the positive effect of non-pesticides food. And so we created this program, and we were invited to United Nations to present. Then they didn't quite like the O word. They said, couldn't you use another word except organic? No, this is not the case. So we had to argument for 1 year, and then we were let into the United Nations. So today, Organic Food System Program is a network, global network, and it's the most significant and I think the only wholehearted organic program in the whole of the United Nations. And what we do now, we try to advocate for and give scientific evidence that organic is very good for your health. It's without pesticides, and especially we are doing some research in France. It's called the Bionutrinat Santé, and it amazing results. In France they have grown-up people joining this study, about 150,000, a group of 150,000 being investigated for 10 years. And we see that people eating more than 60% organic in their dietary patterns have up to 50% less of the communicated diseases like heart diseases and so on. So we find that we have very significant results in eating organic. And the next phase is also that it's not eating organic, but we're looking what kind of lifestyle.
yeah,
Because what we're doing boils down not only to how we produce, how we farm, how we eat. It also boils down to lifestyle. So what you said now, Andre, about the principles of health, ecology, fairness, and care is a hint and a way of a new lifestyle that really can save our planet, take care of nature and people at the same time. Because this leads deeper down, as also in iFarm Organics, it's lifestyle. We had the Organic 3.0, which actually first time we met was, I remember, in South Korea in Busan. And then we talked about also lifestyle. That Organic 3.0, all the 4 principles boils down to a new lifestyle, a new way of doing inclusiveness, a new way of connecting to nature. And for me, organic is more and more a lifestyle, accepting people, accepting all the differences in the world, and that we have to find something together that could lead for the future, also as beacons for the young generation to see there is an alternative. The alternative is organic.
I'm glad you mentioned Organic 3.0 because the whole purpose of that was to reposition organic agriculture as a lighthouse of change, and which we believe it should be. And it's not just, say, large monocultures of grains or whatever produced without chemicals. It's actually to talk about the bigger picture on how we can use organic in production, in our lifestyles, but also in our attitudes towards other people, towards big picture issues like poverty, like climate change, like the loss of democracy, the loss of fairness. This is what we tried to do. But like you found with the UN, when we started using the O word,
Yeah.
we ended up with a incredible resistance. So when we chose regenerative as a neutral word without baggage, and that has worked really well. And from our point of view now, in less than 10 years, we've formed the world's biggest regenerative organization and
Yeah, it's fantastic.
got regenerative all over the map. But we are actively positioning it within what we'll call the organic agriculture paradigm of nature-based systems. And particularly, once again, around the four principles. That's the easiest way to get our messages across.
Yeah, and I must also add a little bit, Andre. I've been working here in Scandinavia with the Sami people, these indigenous people that actually have in the heart and in the backbone the relation to nature. And I worked for a couple of years in your district there in Australia, and I worked also with the Aborigines. I was close to Aborigines in Australia, and understanding walkabouts. Then you are taking you relax, you go down to another level of your system, you walk out in the nature to understand nature. And I see maybe one future here for us is to really respecting and recognizing the true value of indigenous knowledge, not only science, but they have wisdom. And so we should, instead of all these, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence. Maybe this is important, but most important is to listen to these people, indigenous wisdom. I mean, we should have wisdom, a society of wisdom, not only knowledge. We should also be led by science always, but we should also take into account the whole picture of wisdom. And then I think our people, indigenous people from all the continent, we should invite them, listen to them, and see what we can learn. I remember now, 3 days ago, I went to this EAT Lancet in Stockholm. Then there came a man from Canada, one of the really old people from Canada. He said the same. You are talking about systems, but let's talk about wisdom. What is the wisdom of a system? So this, I think, if next phase of Regeneration International and what we do in Global Alliance and in EARA, we should join and really listen to what we can learn from this indigenous knowledge.
I fully agree with you. Like you, I've spent a lot of my life actually working with Indigenous Australians. In fact, some of my closest friends are, but also with Indigenous people around the world. And it's not just only wisdom. They manage some of the most environmentally stable and productive systems for thousands and thousands of years. Different civilizations came and went, like the Romans, the Egyptians, and so on. In this continent, we've got we've got 60,000 years of food systems, the oldest agriculture. And we've got the evidence to prove it. We've actually got the oldest megalithic buildings built by Aboriginal people continuously lived on for 52,000 years. And this is an incredibly stable, productive society until, so-called modern civilization came in and disturbed it. I've seen the same with the most productive food systems in Borneo, in the Amazon, and so on. I think you're lucky to a degree that the Sami, still being able to live a traditional lifestyle, and they've had the opportunity to adapt to the 21st century on, to a degree in their own terms. And I think in many ways that's what we need to do, is respect these cultures and allow them to make the decisions on how they adapt. No culture is static, but we don't impose our culture on them.
No, I think that that wisdom is important, Andre. That, and also we also see now that giving the respect, giving the recognition to the smallholder farmer, the families, the herdsmen, the fisher families, is so important. And I must say, that's also an issue we should look at here in Norway. Or in Norway, we have the fisher families out coming fish from the Barents Sea and all that. And they would like to connect to people in other parts of the world because they have some traditional knowledge. Where, when do the fish come? How much fish can they take so it can reproduce? We're talking about regeneration, and we also, the sea, as you say, the sea where you live is the biggest ocean in the world, and we have to take care not only of the agricultural land, but also of the oceans. So we need to connect. We should see how can we transform and further address from Regeneration International also fishermen families all over the world. So we take in the whole food chain, because it is from science and from Organic Food System Program, the science. We need proteins, and we know that we can have more effective proteins in the future from the sea, not only from the land. So this, I think, could be so interesting to see the fisher families, see how to include that in our group.
I think one of the really important things, what you're talking about, is we need to connect. And we formed Regeneration International as a partnership of like-minded organizations. And at the moment, in 10 years since we formed, 10 years ago, we became an organization. And as of now, we're 700 partners in over 80 countries on every continent, and growing every month. And for us, this is the really important part of what we're doing. We don't call them members. We like the flat structure that we're partners, respect each other, and how can we help each other achieve what we want to do, rather than top-down imposing system.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the beauty with the People Food Summit. It's people. It's not system. It's people to people, and I think then you can find these people all over the place in hierarchy, high up and down, and the grassroots level. But when we start to talk about people, we talk in an inclusive language, and this for us now in the future, to be inclusive, to respect each other, mutual respect and trust is so important for what we are doing.
Well, Jostein, I really agree with you, and particularly at the moment, given all the different issues, we need to be able to basically connect, respect, and get on. About 3 weeks ago, I was in Vietnam for the 8th Organic Asian Summit, and there's 35 countries all over Asia, all of them with different languages, different religions, different cultures. And we all get on like the best of friends. And I was thinking,
Mm,
this is the model
mm,
for the world. We shouldn't be
yeah.
fighting. We should be
Mm,
actually celebrating our
mm,
diversity and enjoying each other as friends.
mm. And when we do that, Andrea, when we start to celebrate, we invite people into our common task for the future of regenerating not only soil but our soul.
Yeah.
And this is where we come into health, ecology, fairness, and care as a basic values for a future generation, and also inviting young people to discuss with us, inviting them to see, is this a way forward, instead of more more of this self-esteem and all these things that we see that people are thinking only of themselves.
Jostein, I just want to say, I think we'll end it there because what you said is so profound, particularly young people, our next generation of leaders, how important that is. So I just want to thank you so much. And I really hope we can catch up somewhere in real life sometime rather than just Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm looking so much forward to listen to what comes out of the People Food Summit this year. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Everybody, and once again, welcome to the People's Food Summit. And I'd like to introduce you to another friend of mine. We've been friends now for a few decades. And Nadia Scialabba has spent 33 years working in the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and has had a fundamental role in promoting organic systems and agroecology within the United Nations. We were both in India last week at Navdanya, and Nadia is currently there at the moment. She's teaching at Dr. Vandana Shiva's A to Z of Agroecology. She's on her phone because the bandwidth in Navdanya and Dehradun in India is not the best. So, well, this is the best way that we can connect at the moment. And I really appreciate, Nadia, that you're taking the time from your schedule at Navdanya to speak to us at the People's Food Summit.
Thank you, Andre. It's my pleasure.
So, Nadia, I suppose what I'd like to start with is, how did you start working in the United Nations at FAO, and particularly get involved within the organic sector in FAO?
Yes, I mean, I entered FAO as a young intern, basically. And I was working in fisheries in the beginning because I'm a marine biologist by training. And then as the Earth Summit was coming up in 1992, my director said, well, we need an ecologist. There were no ecologists in FAO. I was the only one. And I was a bit at the margin, really. They didn't really know where to put me in reality. So I was hired for 1 year to prepare for the Earth Summit. And this is when I started working on sustainable agriculture and rural development, which is known as Chapter 14 of Agenda 21 SARD. And so that was a participatory process, of course, where all NGOs and countries were involved in that process to develop this action plan. Unfortunately, this action plan wasn't really implemented the way it was, because sustainability became a buzzword and everything was sustainable. It was hijacked as a concept, and it wasn't really defined properly by politicians. So it eventually became really not the way to go, I would say. And then in 1993, which was just after the summit, when FAO was already prepared to implement SARD action plan, which we had developed in the institution over 2 years, actually, involving all divisions. The new director general who arrived, he said, well, environment is not really my priority. It's the work of some other organizations. That's not my job. For me, it's only food for all. And I was basically jobless. I was paid, of course, but I didn't really have anything to do because environment wasn't the priority anymore. So I thought, well, okay, so I'm going to start working on organic agriculture because it's the only system that does produce food in an ecologically sound manner. But of course, not being an agronomist, not being an organic specialist, I didn't really know. So I invited FEEBLE. FEEBLE is the Research Institute for Organic Farming Research, to come and give a training over 1 week for FAO staff on organic agriculture. And this is how we started. And that was already in 94, 95, 96, 97. But we had a lot of discussions and debate within the organization that organic wasn't really something which can be proposed to government because it's flower power. I mean, it wasn't really considered as a real science. And the work was systematically laughed at as not really something serious. So I thought, okay, considering the situation, let's ask countries what they think about it. Member countries means representative of 192 governments who send their Ministry of Agriculture representative to FAO, to the Committee on Agriculture, once every 2 years. So in 1999, I have put on the agenda of the Committee on Agriculture, organic agriculture. And to this purpose, I had to prepare a discussion document for countries to consider and take a decision. Doing this document was really an undertaking because I was challenged on every single ground that this wasn't scientific. I was a bad scientist. And actually, I wasn't alone doing it. I was working with Kathleen Merrigan. Kathleen Merrigan had academic exchange contract, and she came to FAO to help me on that. And she is the one who drafted the organic standard in the US and lately became the deputy
of agriculture,
secretary of agriculture, actually, yes. So she had a very important position, much more than FAO actually in the world. But then she wasn't there yet, but she had drafted the American standard. We were working together and we were accused of not being able really to do the work properly. It was a very, very difficult process. But this very that we could really have the good arguments on every single ground. And the main argument was really that many developing countries are organic agriculture by default. It's not certified, but they have polyculture, they have very good systems. They could improve it and start exporting and getting a price premium on their produce. So this opportunity for developing country to be able to enter northern market with a price premium was really what convinced the representative who came to the meeting, and the document was accepted unanimously, which was a surprise for everybody. And it was a victory in a way, that we had it on the agenda finally in 1999. But my direct director came to me and said, okay, you want to work on organic agriculture, go ahead and do it, but no staff, no funding, just do it. So I was deprived of any means except my own time. So my way of working was always through networking. And I must say that even though people recognize me as being kind of a leader of the organic agriculture agenda, I was only a mediator. Every time that I was challenged with a question, or even I received a technical question on how to address certain problems in organic agriculture system, I had my network, starting with IFOM network, with all people like you and many others, and also the FEEBLE network of the Research Institute. So I would put the question on email, and within half an hour, I would have answers from at least 2-3 people to any question that was posed to me. So all of a sudden, I became like the center of knowledge on organic agriculture, even though I wasn't the specialist, I should say, because I was representing this majority of silent people who were proponents of organic agriculture. On the work side, I had many young people coming to me and offering their time free of charge. So in FAO, it was a bit of a problem to have these young people coming without a contract. And they had to start the volunteers program because there was this Nadia problem. What do we do with all these young people? Because, for social security purposes, they needed to have some type of contract. So I had tens and tens of young people coming and helping me with the work. And I was able to do lots of things because of this workforce which was there. And at the same time, countries started making requests, let's have a technical cooperation project on organic agriculture. So we started having projects all over the world to develop organic agriculture. And it was always done in networking with the organic community, the whole organic community. The beauty of it is that many of my friends would kind of use the document produced by FAO on organic agriculture to go to their own minister and say, listen, FAO is saying this can be done, so you have to help us doing it. So it was empowering people because it was coming from the UN. And this is how the whole program developed. And we had different projects, of course, but maybe the main one was in 2006, 2007, actually, when I organized the conference on organic agriculture and food security. Because if up to 2006, most of the conversation on organic agriculture was about the ecological soundness, there was no recognition of its contribution to food security. So when the conference on food security was happening, again, it was a major undertaking and a collective exercise to bring all the evidence forward and discuss it. And I had requested that each division director within FAO of all divisions be the not. And the report of this conference went to the Committee on Food Security because the Committee on Food Security was happening just a few days later. And the Committee on Food Security approved the document. They had, to be frank, they had some question about extra labor that would bring to women, for example. But they said, we see a potential, for improving food security, but we want to look more at the labor aspects of it. So we had an approval again from another committee, which was a very strong committee, actually, in terms of organic agriculture project. And so on. I mean, I could say many other stories.
Yeah, look, Nadia, I just want to say your role is really important. Part of it, I should have mentioned in my introduction, you're Dr. Nadia Scialabba. You've got a PhD in environmental sciences, and you've written a lot of peer-reviewed papers as well. And those, those documents actually do have weight, and I've seen the way they've had weight. The other one which you mentioned is you're very good at networking, bringing us all together. So some of the examples, I think one of the ones that was really important is we, under your auspices at FAO, we had the roundtable on organic agriculture and climate change. And that was a very important document with the research that we got out of it. A very important, committee that we.
Yeah, I think the roundtable on climate change was extremely interesting. It did put different experts together to put their collective effort into a very interesting document that came out of it, also on demonstrating scientifically that if the whole of agriculture in the world became organic, we would be mitigating all the greenhouse gases. And what happened just recently, actually, in 2000, a review on organic agriculture and climate, it was the evidence as of 2010 to one of the Springer important papers on agriculture. And they wrote to me now and they said, well, this paper that you wrote in 2010 is the most cited paper of our journal. And since now it's our 40th anniversary, we would like you to update this paper. So I'm currently actually working on the paper because of the interest it has been receiving by the international community.
Oh, well done. I'm really pleased to hear that, Nadia. That's fantastic. And it's not just food security, it's not just climate change. We can talk about a lot of other things that you did. And one was solving the problem of organic certification and trade, the fact that each country's or regions' organic regulations were a barrier to organic trade and a cost. And we had is a few projects. I suppose the one I was involved in was the Gomer project, that where we basically started that whole issue of countries doing equivalence rather than compliance. And you had a significant role in that with FAO.
Well, actually, that was even, I think, more of a success because that was a joint effort of UNCTAD, that was IFOAM and FAO. And I had formulated a project proposal to have money from donors in order to look at equivalence and harmonization of organic regulations, mainly to facilitate the entry of developing country into northern market. My own institutions, i.e. in FAO, it wasn't submitted to donors because they thought that wasn't important. And then what happens, again, through the network with IFOAM, I passed it on to IFOAM, and IFOAM gave it to the northern countries. And it was financed by the northern countries, by the Nordic countries, for 10 years in a row, actually. Yeah. But the money went directly to IFOAM because it didn't come from FAO. And I was working through IFOAM on this project. And we had very interesting stakeholders meeting for over 2 years to work on all aspects of harmonization and equivalency. We produced KOROS, which is the Common Organic Regulation Standard, which is now in IFOAM actually as the basis for regulations. But most importantly, when we finished our work in 2012, by then, the EU standard, our equivalency tool and the KOROS tool, as they put it in the footnote in their standard, so it was recognized. It was so recognized that during that same event, and we were in BioFach in 2012, the US came and signed with Europe and that was also one of the, I would say, side effects of that process of involving people from different countries, from different NGOs, from different certification agencies to work together. Unfortunately, I must say that as in many other fields, the world has gone back a little bit. Yeah. We were very, very progressive in those years. And the whole equivalency issue has taken a step back with countries. Now they all want harmonization, which is a bit unfortunate, but I think that the politics in the world has been developing at its own pace, and it's something we cannot really do much about it.
Yeah, well, for me, this is a role that the current World Board of IFOAM should be taking up, but they're not. In our time, we did a lot of work. Admittedly, too, also at that time, we had Catherine Merrigan again. She was the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture in the US. And, what's his name, who was the Commissioner for Agriculture.
She was the one who signed the agreement with the EU.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. She came to BioFach. And so yes. That, to have someone like her who at her position in the US was significant, but her whole role in the US was very significant. But what we achieved at BioFach was the two largest organic markets in the world signing equivalents.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was a big event. But yeah, so Nadia, the other one which you've actually had a big role in was really getting agroecology up in FAO as well.
Well, I had a role, but not such a big role in a way, because the way of working in FAO, after we had this document approved in 1999 on organic agriculture, we had to have some type of institutional structure to work on the program. So we created a priority action plan on organic agriculture from 2001 to 2009, more or less, for 9 years it lasted, where we had cross-sectorial funding to work together. So I had a working group, meaning that I had representatives from different departments working together in an interdepartmental working group that I was leading. And we had many projects, of course. And one of the members of the group, who is Caterina Battello, she was coming from the agriculture department, and she was there. So when agroecology came as a political request from France. France wanted to have an agroecological conference in FAO in order for the minister in France to have an excuse and push agroecology in Brittany, where he had problems with big production, actually. So FAO took the decision at the request of the French government to have this conference. And I did not want to really be the one leading the agroecological work in FAO because it wasn't defined. I prefer to remain within the organic envelope, I would say, where you know exactly what you're talking about, what is allowed and what's not allowed. And during those years, agroecology wasn't defined, and some people still thought that they could use some GMOs, for example, you know. So I did not really want to be on both sides. So Katerina, who was part of my group, she took the lead in FAO on agroecology. So I was helping her indirectly behind the scene on substance, if you wish, but the political agenda is something which I have never really espoused on my own.
Yeah. Katerina organized through the sponsorship of France, FAO's first agroecological conference. And I remember afterwards having the meetings trying to define it, because in that conference you had people just presenting industrial pesticide agriculture as agroecology. And it was after that event that they started to define it, although how can you say, FAO might have one, or Katerina, but there's so many other definitions. Anyway, that's another story. The other thing I just want to say now.
Things improved really, but I wasn't the one leading it.
Sorry? Yeah, but
I'm saying that things improved eventually, but
yeah, no, yeah, I agree. What I want to talk about now, you've retired from FAO, and now you're very active with Nadia International, and I'd just be interested to hear exactly how you're going with that.
Yeah, I am part of the board of Nadia International, which is based in Italy, and the project where we had most activities in the past 3 years now was training school children and grown-ups on farms on agroecology, different forms of agroecology, of course. So I've been participating in this training, and I'm part of the board, of course. And when it comes to Navdanya India, I, like you, come to this Navdanya farm every year between September and October and give courses to students. And yesterday I finished my part. I did 3 days of course, and it was mainly on quantum consciousness, actually, the first few days. And it was also on understanding the earth as a living being, you know, try to frame the whole work of agriculture and an ecosystem which is alive, where everything is connected. So I spent a lot of time trying to raise awareness on that aspect and also try to look at the last scientific outbreaks, when people understand better the difference between life and matter formation, and how plants develop, according to all these subtle forces in agroecology. And the last day was dedicated to biodynamic agriculture, and that was nice, because we have done some we've done tree paste, and we treated the mango trees here. We've done pollinator seed balls, so we had fun also.
Oh, that's great. And actually practical hands-on, I like that. And teaching people about BD, it's just great. They're a great group of students, aren't they? I really enjoyed.
They are very committed and very interested. I mean, I look at it as I'm speaking, it really gives me a lot of energy, because they are curious, they're intelligent, they want to do, they're doers. Yeah.
Yeah. I see them as our future leaders, Nadia. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Anyway, look, Nadia, I think the connection is not the best at the moment, and I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking to us. And I just want to say that from my point of view, you're one of our unsung heroes. People don't actually realize the importance of what you've done. This whole thing about how one person who is focused and strong can influence and have so much influence. And to think of what you've done in the United Nations, I can't think of anyone who's done more for our sector than you. And I think we owe you a big thank you for that, Nadia. So
I wouldn't have been able to do anything without you guys out there, the silent majority.
Yeah, that's why we're all friends, Nadia. We work together. So Nadia, thank you. I really look forward to catching up either back in Italy or in India or somewhere else on the planet. So ciao.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks very much for this chat, and all the best.
Bye.
Hi, hello. Hi, Simon. Hello, world. It's World Food Day, and we are privileged to host Simon Kraemer. Simon grew up in the German agri-food system. He's the son of a butcher and a chef. He grew up right in the middle of the food system. He's a trained political agroeconomist, co-midwife, and executive director of the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, which is a pan-European and direct democratic regenerative farmer association. He has years of experience in public and private sector consulting, agri-food sustainability. Simon is convinced that the women, the youth, and regenerating farmers are the key to regenerating the future. I like that, Simon. He also lives and learns in his farm. He's a farmer now based in Sicily. We had a privilege of hosting Simon last year, I think when the Alliance was still very new. But I also had another privilege of meeting Simon in person this year in Brussels, yes, in May, at the Global Alliance for the Future of Food Summit. So, Simon, you're welcome. Please tell us more about yourself and how things have moved along with the Regenerative Alliance, especially because we also understand that you guys have been undertaking a study, a regenerative agriculture study. So we're really keen to learn more about your findings and everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for welcoming us again and having me, Precious. Yes, also was amazing meeting you in Brussels this year, and we are still relatively young, I would say, and since the very beginning, fiercely supported by Regeneration International and all your great spirits, and also Andre was again part of consulting and helping us with the study. And we are now in our third year. We have our annual gathering coming up in December. And this year we had also, I'll show you some details on that of our Regenerating Europe tour. So yeah, we had the great privilege of traveling to meeting a lot of farmers on different agroecology conferences in Groundswell in Portugal, in the UK. We went Denmark, and we'll continue now. So we're meeting a lot of our European sisters and brothers. And I'll share you a little bit on our current thinking and then on the study, and then let's get into some questions, I suppose, if that's cool.
Nice. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I'll start nicely back, because you say you asked me to share a little bit what motivated us on the study and our farmers here in Europe. We often forget there was, for example, the amazing farmer movement in the English so-called Civil War of the true levelers, who already, Cromwell was just, more like a liberalist, pro-capital guy wanting more power from the monarchists. But in the same Civil War, there was a movement already that had true re-indigenization, true equality of women and men, and a true understanding of culture being part of nature. They were, of course, oppressed, but one of their leaders said so wisely and asked if the earth was made to preserve a few covetous proud men to live at ease, the colonialist white supremacists, or was it supposed to preserve all her children? So we really want to show where that's coming from. And we know that when matristic societies were guiding our metabolism with nature, we were helping nature to be more diverse, more cooperative, more productive. We were building soil organic carbon. So when we indigenuited through better cooperation with ourselves, developing language, and then better cooperation also with Mother Earth to domesticate plants and animals in a way that would enhance diversity, we were building soil organic carbon, and then patriarchy, violence, state, and so forth develop, and since then we are degrading. As EARA, we are a farmer association, as you see in the intro, pan-European, but also really we want to be undogmatic and heal our coalescence of all of the stewards that are going into the direction of regeneration. Here in Europe, of course, we have been colonizing ourselves so much so that we don't even have indigenous elders of the land again. So we understand kind of our farmers. I mean, of course, a part of in Sweden and still some where colonialism haven't really gotten to yet. So we're trying to coalesce the farmers to be the core anchor of a society that can regenerate their democracies and their ecologies in symbiosis. We have now a lot of partner organizations growing with us, and in a very simple form now it's rebuilding our natural capital and our societies by giving more to nature while we farm instead of taking out always more. We are organized in a way that we're trying to also constantly regenerate our own democratic practice so that we don't degenerate into a farmer association where the farmers are not really involved anymore in a direct democratic way. That means just once a year delegating some board and then getting back with the decisions of the executive team, but doing constant consensus-based decision-making through online meetings and so forth. We have define regeneration as outcome-based, context-specific, systematic, and as a continuous life-enhancing process. And that's really what the farmers of the different, let's say, philosophies of agricultural praxis are coalescing around. And that's why we think we can regenerate from soil to heart to law, from the biodistricts to the continent Europe. And we in Europe, we have it. A big need, because as everyone is out there in the world to see right now, some of our governments are among the most reactionary, morality negating governments. And that's because our societies are segregated, kind of how our most degraded soil microbiomes, highly competitive, highly centralized, and thereby degrading. Whereas we see on the other side, if we have really healthy soil microbiomes, we are a diversity of cooperating multitude. And we see now in the world that, from the Eurocentric perspective, are the periphery of the underdeveloped, or as even the foreign minister of Europe said so ugly, it's not in the garden of Europe, but it's those people like the currently under huge violence suffering sisters and brothers of the Kurdish liberation movement that are regrowing ways to really understand how we can regenerate our democracies from the very root. And that's the same that we are trying to do with our ecosystems too. The last kind of meta comparison I like to make, because we are coming to some quite hopeful things we are seeing in the study, is, we have a huge innovation evolution in our understanding of science, of plants, the ecology, like the water. Our current concept of how rain is coming to our earth was just theoretically first developed, in 2007. Now we're getting here how plants can become completely resilient and build fullest photosynthesis, of which basically modern agricultural science has no clue, is even negating that, fighting that. And it's similar how our human societies, because most of our indigenous societies have developed the social reflexes and all the tools that are keeping them able to resist, basically build the immunity against patriarchy, against nation state, centralization, feudalization, and so forth. And we could understand a little bit that a passive immunity is like gender justice, age justice, which is still patriarchy. We know about gerontocracy. Most of us don't really reflect and know about so much, yes. And of course, property justice, and ultimately really becoming culture and nature in a harmonious way again. So we are now currently on a 2-year regenerating tour through Europe, where we are hosting at the country level this diversity to coalesce as we were able to manage at the European level with our farmers, so that we are not fighting among our farmers that are trying to farm better with nature year after year, but that we work together as a regenerating biome. We like to understand ourselves a little bit like the fungi, most of the regenerating farmers, they are coming from a conventional education and background. Ultimately, they are learning again how the mycorrhiza, how the cooperation enablers of our soil microbiomes are missing in ecosystems. We have been in Copenhagen, in Portugal, and the UK, and we'll go then on to Rome and Berlin. And then next year we are continuing. Of course, it's also a constant kind of fundraising endeavor. We are also, in that sense, when we are facing and doing our standard lobbying work, collaborating with organizations sometimes absolutely not known for regeneration and having a serious track record of degradation. We take kind of a pragmatic approach with the farmers, and of course never always proposing what others can sign up to, while not allowing them to have a leverage of what we're saying. And if they agree, then it helps us to build the legitimacy in front of our nation state decision makers. In Denmark, we also had an amazing regenerative organic farmer where we did our tour stops. Always at the tour stops, we put farmers front and center, and also have farm visits aligned. Then to come to the practical terms of what we try to show in the study is really in Europe, we have the most escalating land prices anywhere. So for normal farmers, family farmers, young new entry farmers, to keep access to land to farm arguably is the most difficult here. Also, our land concentration is escalating. That's, I think, still a figure from 2020. I would assume that it's much more concentrated now already. Then also in Europe, in the last years, of all the money that we, the people, spent on food, what actually arrives at the farmer's door has been decreasing massively over the last years. And obviously, as a result of that, the number of people in Europe who are farming is decreasing and almost halving again in the next 15 years. And now we have climate change. So many in Europe are quite proud in the agricultural scene and system of our super high yields. They are now showing their full fragility because most of them, of course, until now being completely reliant on the standard green revolution agricultural treadmill innovations. So we set out with the research that at the same time was supposed to give education. So we have been discussing in many papers, a policy paper, a white paper. Now we have published the research and also an opinion with the European Economic and Social Committee, which is kind of the consensus organ of the European Union of the civil societies and trade unions. So that's actually a very great document in terms of cross-sectoral intersectional consensus on regenerative agriculture in Europe. We set out with the research to really disprove what people still believe is unchallenged assumption in agricultural science, in policy discourse, and also among many conventional farmers here in Europe. Namely, that if we would want to reduce the inputs that we know that harm nature, like synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, or deep mechanical soil disturbance, we here in Europe would necessarily have to take a cut, so a reduction in our productivity, both in yields and the income for farmers. And we set out to show that that's not the case. Because in Europe, you must imagine even the most ambitious policymakers and scientists, they would say that, or they are publishing reports on this, also modeling studies and so forth, that if we reduce synthetic fertilizer only by 20% nitrogen and our pesticide use by only 50%, that even in 2050, we couldn't be so agroecologically innovative that we would achieve the same productivity. So really, we set out to show that that's complete BS and that our best farmers today are already far better than they can achieve the farmers being in 2050. And of course, at the same point, you know how with the whole organic movement and the great development that they have spun for agriculture that is life-affirming and not degrading, we always have the stain of the scientists and the policymakers saying, organic agriculture is not so productive. Like in yields and stuff, you usually have like 50% less in standard arable crops, at least in our high-yielding regions, in what they euphemistically call the mature agricultural sectors. And we want to show to the world systematically that we are making a new innovative leap in humanity's agricultural evolution. And this innovative leap is indigenuated by the farmers themselves, not by corporations, not by some laboratories or the bureaucrats or the scientists. And so we looked at 78 farms over 3 years in a full input and output comparison with satellites, and we looked at it basically in 2 ways. So we look how much are the average farmers producing the same crop in that country, how much inputs do they use and how many yields do they produce. And then we also compared for ecosystem services each field to 3 random fields in the same pedoclimatic and land use category context to show how much better the pioneering farmers are for drought resistance, for infiltration capacity when we had climate change, rain events, and so forth. And we had, in the end, I think about 60 independent researchers from all over the world signing up in our self-made peer review process, among them Andre also. And we are amazed by the results. We didn't know the results coming up, but I think for all of us, the farmers of the world, it shows where we can go, and it's only the beginning. So what we show, we then, of course, we didn't only look at organic farmers, but we also looked at the farmers who are part of EARA, for example, who are clearly advancing on their strategy to reduce inputs year over year, to have a kind of soft landing or processual approach towards regenerative organic agriculture. And we show that already today, we basically have the same yields in kilocalories and proteins per hectare, but we use 60% less synthetic fertilizer in nitrogen, whereas the scientists and so forth would say not even 20% reduction is possible. Then we reduce in total toxicity load the pesticides by 75%. And the farmers, obviously using less inputs, among them also less fuel, have more money for themselves. And now comes the real interesting thing. Our farmers achieved the same yields as the average farmers, but almost only with feed from their own region and country. No feed imported from outside of Europe. So also a completely self-sustaining system that then also, as we assume, wouldn't be needed on dumping some fake cheap products somewhere else at the cost of other farmers somewhere else. And ultimately, in photosynthesis and soil cover, almost a quarter better than the region, and plant diversity. We still have a lot of doing to improve further our methodology, and we're working on a second phase. But I would not go into the details of the methodology with you, just show a little bit now.
Yeah, so just one moment to really like pause at the results. Can you go back?
Yes.
A little bit. So this is really amazing. First of all, this needs to be shared broadly to just beyond Europe, because I think you guys here are trailblazing. Like you say that, you know, people doubt a lot our ways of farming, regenerative agriculture. And also we doubt because it's probably the fear of the unknown, or the fear of transitioning from our comfort zones that are not even comfortable, because as you are saying, it's expensive, you spend a lot more, and you still get the same yields as a regenerative farmer who is in fact saving more money and eventually gets better. So yeah, I just wanted, to maybe pause here and see if you guys are using any other platforms to share. I know through Andre, who's also International Director at Regeneration International, your results could really be amazing to stir up other farmers to consider the transitioning. And like you say, I think because this is a first journey, you've already boldly said that, you know, methodology needs to be improved. But you know what? Results are results. So yeah, just wanted to throw that comment in and see if there's a plan to share these amazing findings first. Yeah.
We did, I think it was published in end of June. So I think we can do a second wave, because I totally agree with you. I mean, there's one thing we say in the study, and yeah, methodologically improved is because we have a hopefully healthy understanding of constructive criticism as the best way for regenerating forward. Also to excite all of humanity, because what are we getting excited now? Oh yeah, we have better computer chips, so we are having AI, so we can maybe grow into superhumans. And why do we get so excited about that? Because we look at the most amazing computer chip out there and look where the best computer chip was 5 years ago. But in agriculture, all the time, we just look at the average chip that we all have in our phones. We look at the average chip of the farmers out there. Instead, if we look at the pioneering farmers who are leading the innovation, we can say, whoa, there's a path to re-indigenizing ourselves everywhere by embracing collaboration with the farmers who are relearning a new sophistication of cooperating with nature.
Amazing. And with these findings, I mean, it's truly revolutionary. Was there anything that shook you, or you expected these kind of outcomes?
I was very much hoping for these kinds of outcomes. Of course, we are here in Europe now working for a long time, so we get a feeling for our mismanagement and basically of the methodological criticism of the rest that is produced, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But I will show some figures. I'll show some examples, and then I show what was the most amazing surprise that we didn't even know could be there. And then I will be ending on that, because that's, I think.
Good. Okay, let's progress. Thanks, Simon. Thanks. This is beautiful. Go, you can continue.
I'll just bring some examples, because we look, of course, at the per farmer, so that people here and also other farmers, of course, who are, for example, in a conventional treadmill here, who are highly specialized, have high debts. It's not easy for most of our family farmers in Europe to adapt, or else where they have the debt clutch is on. So, for example, with sugar beet farmers, they have usually long agreements, highly specialized machinery, so they can't just stop producing sugar beets tomorrow. And here we see a farmer from Switzerland, a real pioneer. He's also having done his, let's say, regenerating, becoming only like 6-8 years ago, before he was fully intensive. Had, of course, a good struggle with his dad to change the practices on the farm, as that's here. And now he is achieving more sugar beet yields, so a crop also where you would say it's the most difficult producing regeneratively, because it's highly disruptive to the soil in general. I mean, it's one of our worst production methods in conventional, let's say. Crazily productive, of course, with 95 tons per hectare. And he's able to do that now with 88% less pesticides in total toxicity load assessment. He's doing that with 50% less fuel, which means 50% less mechanical violence to the soil. And then on the fertilizers, 70% almost nitrogen reduction, 33 phosphorus and 50 potassium. And he's achieving that by basically having 13% higher whole year photosynthesis production on his fields and soil cover than the neighbors, because he's super sophisticated in doing cover crops, which are precision guided cover crops with more than 20 species. In our WhatsApp chat, our farmers sometimes have, everyone shares their pictures of cover crops, and then we are, everyone is getting excited about the beauty of the diversity of the cover crops. He always has wonderful cover crops. And then, for example, one other example is, also still a huge debate, a completely ill-guided debate, which we will also try to work more towards in the second part of the study, is cows, even if managed in cooperation with nature and animal health and welfare, is eating land, would be a wasteful way of using our land, making, of course, having some special interests under most of these debates, I would argue, of people who want to further concentrate our protein chain. And Christine is a wonderful pioneer in southern Germany of holistic management or adaptive multi-paddock grazing and so forth. And we compare here a way that Christine is producing beef meat and how a standard conventional way is in Germany to produce beef, so fattening bulls. We are comparing one time standard German feed with rapeseed, soy, wheat, and some grass hay, and mainly maize silage, and most of their lives in the stable. And then Christina outside. So Christina is basically using nothing anymore, a part of the fuel to make the hay. No antibiotics, no anti-wormers also, which if you get into the depth of grassland regeneration and beetles, then that becomes an important topic. Whereas, of course, the other way of producing that beef is highly energy and input intensive. No, first of all, in the conventional way of arably producing the feed, and then they have a lot of antibiotic use and so forth. And Christine is now per hectare, although she's using no inputs anymore, and the others are, putting all the hectares on steroids, producing only 15% less proteins, of course, with a completely different nutrient density and omega-3 to omega-6 ratio and health impact on the people eating that meat, at no imported feed, basically, and also making 45% more profit. So it's also, we see that this whole argument of producing, and you probably know some of those guys saying, the more intensive the carbon efficiency per beef or per protein is going down. That's why we have to make it more intensive, because if the cow lives longer, it burps more and it creates more methane, Even that argument, even if we would let these assumptions stand like this, it's not holding anymore, because the sophistication of the cooperation with nature and our production methods by these innovators and everywhere around the world is just getting so good again. And then we kind of, per country then, for example, here in Italy, we had 8 pioneering farmers where we did these assessments on their productivity per hectare and compare them to the average farmers of Italy. And you see here, basically, the country is not, Italy is importing a lot of feed. So, for example, for its dairy and poultry industrial production systems, our farmers have imported no feed outside of Italy, are making 30% more money per hectare, and they only produce 9% less kilocalories and proteins per hectare, but without the imports. And if I can provocatively saying, they are on the high road to being also organic, because they're almost already without mineral fertilizers and reduced pesticide use by 83%. And they achieved that here, you see again, because per hectare they are producing so much more photosynthesis and soil cover. Because in the end, all of the different measures, if that's undersown crop, foliar microbe rich compost spraying, if that's agroforestry, better grazing management, cover crops, that's all in one way or another increasing the photosynthesis of the plants over the whole year and keeping the soil covered. And now going deeper into these 2 proxy indicators, because for us here in Europe, we hope that we can couple public payments to that, because here in Europe we still have the common agricultural policy, so we pay our farmers on average like $350-400 per hectare per year in completely different ways, which of course until today support more the bigger farmers, the industrialized farmers. We have some eco schemes, but they are very bureaucratic heavy and they prescribe farmers what to do. While we need to create the environments in which farmers are supported in their context-specific local innovation management with their farm. And you see here that pioneering farmers throughout the years had much more photosynthesis and soil cover. And photosynthesis is a very good proxy for net primary productivity, which is the basis of all ecosystem services on land and in the sea. The ocean is also the most important space for our continuation on this planet, but I guess we'll go into ocean acidification another day. So they are not only getting better throughout time in producing more of that, the most exciting thing happened in the last year. And that's what we didn't see coming. And, it's just so much hope for all of us on the planet, because I am sure everywhere the pioneers of the regeneration movement are basically crossing this moment. And what does this moment say? As a farmer, we all know mostly how much I produce, no matter how good, bad the farmer I am or whatever, is still how good was the year. Did we have good rains? Did we have some shitty frosts? Whatever. So you see in all of the curves throughout the years, when the normal farmers produce more per year, the pioneering farmers do so too. And then we have a worse year and we are going down. And then again, if the year is worse, also the pioneers are getting worse, which is of course normal. If we have less rain, our capacity to produce more photosynthesis is less, or if we had a lot of flooding. And now in the last year, we see that although the normal farmers are getting worse again because it was a more difficult year, the pioneering farmers kept improving for the first time. So that's maybe in our almighty S-curve of regeneration can be the inflection of the exponential phase. And then we simply don't know where we can be going with nature if we really understand, relearn our most sophisticated symbiosis. And I'll stop there.
This is fantastic. Thank you, Simon. Do you want me to take it back?
No, I think it's cool. It's cool. I mean, I want to say in the end, we always share a note of gratitude with all the people around the world who are already advancing these forms of living with nature.
That's incredible. And I mean, what a highlight that even in the most difficult year. And I mean, we've seen it here. Even I was also happy to see some holistic plant grazing as a planner myself with small family farmers, which is a different social dynamic. But even in the toughest of our years, you still have better green. Like, no matter what, everybody else is losing, the livestock are dying. There's general loss of hope, but like your results are also showing. Now maybe just to tell others or the world, where can they find that opinion document? Is it open to the public for them to read? Because it may have some of your results and people can access to just get the insight and the inspiration.
Yeah, gladly. It's on our website, so it's EARA.farm.
Yeah.
And gladly also always reach out with ideas or criticism also in the forms of getting better together.
Yeah, that's really nice. And have you guys explored, just even the first results, this is like your first baby as an association, and how beautiful. It's no longer research from top down. It's like, nope, we're going to do this ourselves. So have you had like maybe a platform to share it with people who could influence policy, or are you doing those kind of steps, especially through the opinion document, if there's anything? Because I think it's such a nice approach.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, we are working hard. We have a wonderful farmer in Brussels who used to be a professional lobbyist, and then she started her farm with her husband in Spain, and they're also doing holistic management. She's doing the Hub del Norte in Spain. And so we are trying to lobby in Brussels. We had the first, let's say, a humble success in the CAP proposal that was now published, that is, of course, in the complete deterioration of any kind of good or public interest-minded governance here in Europe, Brussels, and in some of our member states. So,
yeah, I mean, this is really cool. Now I'm imagining, you know, how the world is adamant to say, you know, this doesn't work, this cannot carry our world forward. But honestly, we're just sticking our heads on the sand here. We have hope, you know, that's the truth. And we're not saying that it's an easy path, but it definitely has good signs. So like from your research or just from your work as a student of agronomy, as a person who grew up in the middle of the food system, your mom is a chef, your father is a butcher, or I think that's, if I got it right. And then a person who's also like honestly dipped his fingers into farming. And I've heard you speak on how we can influence policy and things, and you are incredible. So I don't know how you do all this. I mean, I was so happy to see you in person in Brussels. But like, if you were to meet a very adamant person who doesn't want to jump into the regenerative boat or not even listen, like what would be your leverage points? You know, just to show that this makes sense, what would be your leverage points?
My leverage point would be probably sharing the full brute reality of our ecosystemic degradation, which, to my knowledge, is a tipping ocean irreversibly by 2045. And they have so far not addressed all of these things in any way. If you say a fully adamant person, I mean, by now I'm believed to think that those are not really, I mean, they have been sliding the slippery slope so deep that if it's a person of that kind, I don't know, everyone else, I would say the line is drawn. You have to choose your side. And I love to say radical regeneration because, you know, people, standard liberalists and of that kind, you know, they get scared when we say radical, whereas we see that really pressuring at this point that is really as radical as it can get. And radical, etymologically, means from the root. So it's not so scary, but we really need regeneration from the root. And I think our pioneering farmers can be the Renaissance women and men of our times if we properly coalesce that with the other movements, the peace movement, the women movement, the youth movement.
And I think our world is really beautiful. We have such an opportunity and are so humbled to be able to do this and to be in connection with you guys. This is a World Food Day recording. What's your exciting message to the world, to Europe, through this platform? If you have any, just a line.
I would share again our infinite gratitude for the sisters and brothers around the world struggling in the same direction as us, and share the note of hope that by being pessimists of heart we can share, and that is we are living and growing the fourth agricultural revolution.
As he does it. Oh, my friend, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Really, lots of gratitude, and we're holding you in very high regard. Thank you so much, Simon, and all of the European movement.
Thank you and the whole Regeneration International team.
Thank you.
So I want to welcome everybody to the People's Food Summit and introduce you to a friend of mine, Marco Schlüter. He lives in Hamburg in Germany, but when I first met Marco, he was actually based in Brussels, and he was the executive director of IFOAM EU, which is our European regional body. And Marco essentially had a very important role and turned IFOAM EU into probably our most effective regional body and IFOAM body. I remember my executive director at the time when I was president, Marcus Arbens, he was always really impressed with the way that IFOAM EU just stood out amongst all our regional bodies in the IFOAM group. And he always said it was because of you, Marco. Marco has since moved on, and he now works for Naturland, which is one of the most important German farming organizations. It's also not a very important certifier. It works not only in Germany, but all around Asia. And Marco himself actually spends a lot of time in Asia. We were only in Vietnam together a few weeks ago. So, Marco, I'll hand it over to you. And if you want to just introduce yourself and your role in Naturland and explain all the wonderful things that Naturland does.
Yeah, thank you, Andre, and also nice that we have that we next to our meeting and conference we have the possibility to chat a bit more. I have a kind of a deep talk. Yeah, as you said, I'm from Hamburg. Hamburg is we say the door to the world. From the trade we are quite let's say global orientated, and I think that was the way why I'm where I am. I mean, on the one hand, I did an unusual decision because I went from a major trade city to the countryside, became or did farming training. I had 5 years on farms training, organic farming, biodynamic actually, and then started to go to politics. So I studied, of course, in Berlin, had then some interactions with the German parliament. So I helped a member of parliament there on agriculture as assistant. And that was my path, let's say, next to some practical education and training in organic fruit growing. Yeah, not the fruits that you grow at your place, Andre, but some more temperated climate. And then it came that with 30 years, I just came to Brussels, had no clue how it worked, but I wanted to know it, and that was, I think, the issue to build something up, and gave me the path in organic farming, which I have now in probably is 30 years on. Yeah, so and with different functions, but the main one you mentioned. And yeah, one thing is in Hamburg we think global. The going from city, let's say, to countryside was a bit unusual, but there was my passion then, and seeing the farm. I mean, seeing the organic farming from the really farming, but also from the political representation, and now working for Naturland as one of the largest international, not national. I would say we're German based, but we're an international organic farmer association. It's quite exciting because in this work you can really see how global work is impacting the daily life of the farmer, and we can make in many cases to a certain extent a difference, which is the one thing that motivates me.
And the fact is you are making a substantial difference. I know in Asia, the various programs, the group certification systems that you're doing are essentially turning around farmers' lives because you're actually giving them opportunities to earn more money through certification and by accessing higher value markets.
Exactly. So, I mean, we started in 1982 in Naturland, actually as I would say, Bavarian association, I can almost say. And the first internationalization was also to whole Germany. But also we were the first one then saying, look, we would take care for tea garden in Sri Lanka. So that where I started in the 1980s, I think it was 85 or something. And then started the Naturland really looked into it to get expertise, but also enabled farmers to have an access to mainly German markets. Now it's more really than also European markets. Our membership now is, if I look on the number, on the level of farmers, we have I'm just looking in terms of area, in terms of farmers. Asia, Africa are the dominant one. If you now leave Germany aside and then Austria. So then we have also, of course, in some in North America, South America, of course, also, but Asia is quite prominent in Naturland, where we have many farmers that work according, let's say, to our understanding of organic farming, means they would also certify it. But what is important, that we are a farm association that offer certification because it helps them for market access. We are not a certification body that had a bunch of farmers as a small addition. So the main purpose is really the farmers. And then we have a couple of services. Certification is just one of them. And of course, I think what the great achievement of Naturland is, that it is a grassroots, yeah. And we have an IFORM or the grassroots organization. Naturland managed to be grassroots and stay a grassroots organization, but it got connected, let's say, with the big market players, but it could keep its identity. And that's quite, I think, a big achievement that not many could achieve. And that's I think that's outstanding. Because that's really important, because it gets the smallholders, it gets other farmers, but we talking and dealing with the different market players around the world. Of course, focus in our case is the market in Germany, Austria. Yeah, but that's, I think, the major achievement, and it opened up the doors for farmers. I mean, actually, we were in Vietnam. I have recently seen a cooperative with cashew nuts that probably will join next year, and I've seen then with the farmers in Vietnam, which is then a kind of cashew forest. They grow also mixed crops like some pineapple, some others. They have some chickens running around, but the people there, they are an ethnic minority. Yeah, so they're very poor. They cannot even eat the chicken, or they can eat the eggs. They sell it in order to buy food. So very poor. And if we can with our work, so we have now a project where we take them on. So we will help them buying some seedlings. We will help them giving some organic fertilizers. We will give them some training together with the cooperative and the company behind. And we will connect them to a value chain in Germany. And with this, the hope is that those farmers have a better life, have a bit of higher income, because you can really see they're living really on the lower end of wealth in terms of money, at least. And so that's, I think, the thing that motivates me, where I can see here we have an impact, here we can help, and here we can make a difference.
This is why I wanted to interview you, Marco, because this is where I've always admired Naturland. There's a lot of big international certification bodies. All they're interested in is charging a lot of money to certify it. In your case, you're not only certifying or group certifying and making it, say, affordable for them, but the whole issue is having a value chain and connecting them to a high value market. So, for me, this is actually one of the really good examples of poverty alleviation and empowering farmers as well, making, you're helping farmers be not just imposing something on farmers, but you're actually helping farmers be empowering them to make their own change. And really importantly, you're changing their lives, and you're doing it on multiple continents.
Yeah, no, that's right. And we also, there was I think 5 years ago, we started to say how we can also getting away also from the recognition of being just a certifier, because then for many farms was like this, but providing much more service. One thing is we don't charge for certification for our one. Of course, we work with inspection bodies, and they will charge, of course, a fee to the farmers, but let's say our relation to the farmers is more about membership fee, and if they sell the products with Naturland, then there's a license fee, but the certification is not, we don't charge anything. And we decided then also to say how we can support more. And one step was really to say, look, let's go more in the region. Of course, we are in 61 countries now, and we cannot be everywhere with own office and staff. That would be not efficient. But we said, for example, in Southeast Asia, it's one where we have quite some members and where we get more engaged. We have now own teams in Vietnam and Philippines at this moment. And we also started Naturland Academy, which is then, of course, mainly focused on the farmers, where we do a twofold approach. One thing is having a digital platform centrally, knowing that, of course, many farmers, they may not have access always to online solution. We try then there are things for download, but we also engage now in local networks and trainers. So we have now just, I think this year that we have engaged senior trainers in Philippines and Vietnam that should also support and help. And of course, it's very much in cooperation. I mean, it's not just, of course, we look on our members, but we look also much beyond. I mean, we don't know who is our future members. We have, we're supporting organic farming worldwide, so we cannot be just limited to membership. So the offer is here really, when we work in Philippines together with the municipalities and cities, that the LOMCP, the alliance that really goes together with the municipalities and cities and provinces in Philippines to work on organic farming, we're supporting them. We're supporting quite some municipalities who want to go organic, and they're quite far away from certification, but they enjoy the training. And maybe if we can create or help them connecting to market, we're happy to do this. But that's not the starting point. Yeah. So out of one, we might now engage. So in Philippines, in Cebu, we have now also a kind of a project where we help now the municipality to have and build agroforestry coffee, which is our understanding of coffee growing, and helps them also connect to local markets, not just in Germany, but maybe also a fair trade coffee. This is then the product, what's coming out of this. So we're really building capacity there. We have other municipalities where we just support them. I mean, they often do this just to have enough food coming out of poverty by having own organic food to nourish their own people, yeah, and having some local markets, which is very important. And of course, then you come to things like we have our standards, but then they may take chicken manure from industrial farming because, and then it would be strange to say in our standards it's not possible, so you cannot do it. On the other hand, they say we are happy to have some input and we have enough to eat. So, and of course, we don't tell them not to take it, although they might not have then, might not be, their farms might not be an issue of certification for Naturland, but it's great what they're doing. They're feeding their people. And I think there we are with the locally adapted systems, yeah. And of course, might not be the ideal step, but it's a step-by-step approach. In Europe, when I worked in IFOM, we had so many exceptions when I started at the beginning of the 2000s, and in a developed organic area like the EU, and slowly they were phasing out. So how can we think in other areas where the development might not be that advanced, but it can go so quick? So that's, I think, always the interesting thing to see the development in some countries, and also then compared where we are, and seeing also all the difficulties we still face, and also the difficulties that we had in former times.
You know, Marco, I just say I really support your approach there, and it's what I like is the concept of a transition pathway, but you're getting people started, and you know that's the most important thing in helping them. And you know, Europe and the Western countries, you know, we've been doing standards since the 1970s, and well, in some ways, I think maybe we've gone overboard with too much regulatory creep. But in other countries, we can't afford to have these perfect standards when, in the end, you know, people need to eat.
Exactly.
And people need to survive.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And that must be, I mean, in the end, it's the people and it's the nature that we have to care for. And then it's a question what organizations can do. And I think what is important for me is that Naturland helps out. I mean, if you grow big, as we did over the past year, we have also a responsibility worldwide to enact. That's why we always have a collaborative approach. We work with IFOM Asia. In Asia, for example, we really want to support their structure because they're very important on the political level and as a booster for organic farming. And we also on the local level, we want to see where we can create added value. Before we started working in the Philippines or Vietnam, we make a ground research. In Vietnam, we organized a project for the umbrella organization there for the Vietnam Organic Agriculture Association. So we helped them building capacity. We took them as a kind of twinning program to Germany and showed what we are doing. So it was quite interesting, and I think we can at least help those organizations a bit to develop, and then we can see where we create value. I mean, there are other parts where we don't create value, then we would not go in, or we would stay out. And yeah, it's on the farming level, but we're also working on the area of raising awareness. So in Philippines, we will have now next year a big national organic day, where we also have one more local focus, but the other thing will be also to open up for food business, to connect them to organic farming, because the conscious there is not so high. So that's what we do. We are a kind of connector based on the from starting from the farm, but also connecting to the different part of society, of economic stakeholders, also policy, and of course we do this in partnership with the other organization.
Yeah, and talking about connecting, Naturland is your day job, but you also have another very important role because you're one of the vice presidents of IFOAM, Organics International. And I know that you've been very, very active in growing IFOAM.
Yeah, I just before we started talking, I thought we are kind of buddies, as you were a long-standing president of this. So, and I'm serving the same body, this kind of stage now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, IFOAM is now over 50 years old. That's something. So it has a role. It was the driving force in many organic developments worldwide. There was a crisis moment, I think 2 years ago, where I had a role also as an interim executive director to let's say consolidate the organization out of the board for I think 1.5 years or something like this. That was a tough moment, but it's really good now that the organization rebuilt, so it's financially stable, and with the new strategy also now to go out and on policy. I mean, it was a very strong, actually at your time, there was a huge policy impact, which I always admired. And I think we are now restarting this, and it's always a question of resources, focus that you have. And this is, we are just also the World Board meeting in Vietnam, and there was a clear wish now to really not anymore look inside, restructuring, let's say, get financially healthy again, but also to really have the impact. I mean, the IFOAM Academy is one of the biggest success story ever, and it's still on high demand. I mean, many groups, states ask for this, funders coming for this. So I think it's a huge success story that we want to enlarge here. So the IFOAM Academy continues to be a very important part. And on politics, I think I mean, we need to work on a resource issue, but we're doing this right now also to come up also really with global campaigns again, because that's really needed to support our members, but the organic movement all over the world to really to strengthen their political capacities. We have to do this with our really great regional bodies, where you say, okay, I mean, I know IFOAM Organic Europe, they're quite stable, but also with IFOAM Asia, the other regions where they need support. So there's capacity building. So I think there's a huge task ahead, because the crises are so big in this world, Andre, that really IFOAM is really needed. And so I think it's now, after, let's say, the recovery period, it's now the reaching out again and really help that we can play our role, because we disappeared perhaps for 2 years a bit from the landscape and the way that it was before. And we have to regain this strongly now, and that's now the focus, I think, of this World Board term, and it's good and it's needed, because again, what has to be solved, the contribution we can make as organic community is so big, it's so important, but it has to be heard, and has to be heard through the umbrella to the regional bodies, but also through the membership.
Yeah, look, I really like your strategy that you guys did as the World Board, and I think it's going to situate IFOAM back to being, the global leader that our movement needs. That's for sure. And I particularly like the fact that you're concentrating on the IFOAM Academy. We've had discussions with Patricia Flores, your manager, and we will support you on that, because we really believe that education and training is probably the most important thing that can be done at the moment.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, if you see, I mean, important is that IFORM looks on where it can also create value. Yeah, with this global authority that it has, with this great membership together, and also with the credibility that it can give. So I think that's really important. We don't want and need to, let's say, give training on things which people on the ground can already doing or can do better. But here that's of so high importance that we're doing this. But we also see from the feedback, actually, Naturland will work with IFORM and VOA together on a training in Vietnam for the academy, based on the German funding and some fundings Naturland has. So we will do a kind of leadership course then, I think, in next year. So that's a great example. And there are many other examples. But and also there's a demand. I mean, you always see if you do something and nobody demands it. So if donors have no interest or if members have no interest, then it's nothing. But the demand, I mean, there's a pile of things we could do is high. Of course, money is of course always a challenge for grassroots organization. I mean, we both know this, yeah. But yeah. So, but on the other hand, there are demands. There are people coming, donors coming, and are willing to give money for this. So this is the best proof that there is a need, and that's fantastic. And I think this is something where we clearly are on a growth path.
Yeah, well, Marco, I just basically just want to really thank you for everything you've done for our sector. I think a lot of people, how can you say, there's people who are well known and their names are, bright lights. You're someone who's been a solid part of our sector for 30 years and done so much and still doing so much, so I just think it's people like you that keeps our sector going. You're not doing it for the money, you're not doing it for the fame and fortune, you're doing it because of your core belief, and that is really important.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. That's true. And you normally don't think about it. You just do it because you have your core belief. I mean, I started in a pupil group to support, let's say, organic consumption as when I was, or actually rainforest protection. So something in your area might quite relevant. And then for the environmental movement to really drive and speak, actually in the beginning, when I was very little, I was so shy. I couldn't talk in front of people. And then because I wanted to change something, I had to learn. And that makes me now even enjoying it. So that was a kind of a personal transformation, but it was always this purpose driven and really walking through different stations. But also then I think what people need if they have a good life to live and work, and particularly work in line with their own beliefs, with their purpose. That's everybody has perhaps a different purpose, but if you disconnect from them, that's the best recipe for an unhappy life. So I decided always to say, let's have a happy life and work for the deep purpose that I felt. And I think that's the same with you, because I always admired when you were going around as president, really transporting the political message. Yeah, I mean, I never know how you did it with your health, because you were everywhere. This was always a miracle, but it was so important also. And I think we should also celebrate more all we have so fantastic people in this movement, yeah, who've done so many work. They dedicated their lives. They didn't. I mean, and then often people also disappear, yeah, because then it's a different path or so. But we should honor those people more, because there's so many, I mean, pioneers now. We are not, organic is not anymore a pioneering thing in the children's stage, but where we have run so many generations of different actors. And when sometimes you go on a certain conference or even an IFORM event, and then you meet them, then you can memorize also different steps. And of course, the role of organic farming, I think, in the 70s when IFORM started, is different perhaps than nowadays. I mean, nowadays the crises are so huge that it cannot be solved just by one system. Or I think we need this allies. That's why we also want to convene discussion with like-minded organization, because I think we need a strong answer, which is very diverse, maybe. But I mean, I personally think, now as a personal statement, I think the crises are too serious that we can base it only on ideology. We have to be pragmatic. We have to see what we can do as contribution from the organic movement and sector, where we can have a huge contribution, but we really have to move on. We don't have any time to waste to really save this planet. And I think that's really the big challenge. And there we need everybody who is serious in their attempt to do this. And there would be no time for arrogance or putting people aside. We cannot allow this.
Yeah, Marco, I fully agree with you. That's why we formed Regeneration International. We wanted to build a movement of like-minded organizations, and that's exactly what we've done. You know, we've got 700 partners now in over 80 countries, and we've done that in 10 years. So, and we're still growing and still building. You know, it's a big world, but, you know, I just want to say also from our point of view, you know, because we want to situate regenerative agriculture in the organic agriculture paradigm of nature-based systems. And so we will be working closely with iPhone. I just want to let you know that we're strong supporters of what you guys do.
Yeah, and it's very, I mean, your, let's say, current organization is a good example how you contribute to the change, to the transformation, maybe where you can say we start taking everyone on board and showing a path, and hopefully many of them end up or get upgraded to organic. Let's say, the organic is never the end, it's the start. So that's really, really important, but also it shows really the focus of one of the basics idea of organic to really regenerate also the nature. I think that's really important because, of course, if you work with global markets, organic is always in the field of tension between ideal, for the people, ideal for the nature, and satisfying market needs. And of course, this is always the challenge of making compromise, maybe also on the wrong side. So I think it's really good to really focus also back what organic originally wants to do with the earth, also of course with the people, and getting this also honored by the market in the end. This is then the other big challenge.
Yeah, well, I'm from this 1970s generation. That's when I started. Well, I just followed a mosquito, and that's not too good. We've had a bit of rain and in the tropics, so the Mozzies are extra friendly. So I just wanted to say I'm from that 1970s generation, and those ideals still mean a lot to me. But anyway, I think we'll close it off now while I get the mosquito. And Marco, it's just always wonderful catching up with you. I look forward, we'll catch up somewhere, sometime on the planet, and just keep up your good work. Ciao.
Yes, we catch up before the 100th celebration of iPhone, right?
I think that's a great idea. I'll take you on that. Okay. Ciao. Hello, and welcome to the People's Food Summit. And I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, someone I've known for quite a long time, Sarah Compson. And she manages the standards at the UK Soil Association. For people who don't know about it, this is actually the world's oldest organic organization. And it started at a time before we used the word organic, when we used the word healthy soil, and where the health of the soil was the basis of what we talked about. It wasn't until the 1940s when J.I. Rodale put out his magazine called Organic Farming and Gardening, and that went all around the English-speaking world. And that's when the word organic took off. And it's only in the English-speaking world. For instance, in Europe, across the channel from the UK, the word bio is used. In India, it's Jaivic. And they all mean very different things. But there used to be lots of these societies. In fact, when I started farming more than 50 years ago, here where I live in far north Queensland, we had the Healthy Soil Society. And as those farmers who started in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, that were my mentors. Sadly, all these soil societies have disappeared. There's only two left. There's one in New Zealand called Soil and Health, and the original is still here, the UK Soil Association. And this organization not only is the oldest, but it has had a fundamental role in shaping the modern organic sector worldwide. For instance, in 1972, they were one of the founding organizations of IFOAM, Organics International. That's the organization that I was president of. And Sarah is actually on the world board of this organization. So the UK Soil Association is still active internationally. Most of the standards started with their work on it. And so I'd like to hand it over to Sarah, whose role is in standards, and just explain, how the importance of the UK Soil Association and its certification and standards in the UK, but also how you're working with other standards like the GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard.
Great, thank you, Andre, and thank you for that lovely introduction. We're about to enter our 80th year next year, so we're starting the celebrations a little early. As you say, we're one of the oldest, well, if not the oldest organic organization in the world. And I think one of the ways that we are quite unique, and one of the ways that our work has impacts, is because we work across the whole food system. So, you mentioned our work in standards, and we also work with policymakers, with farmers, with schools and hospitals to really join the dots. And the connections, really important connections that our founders really emphasized between climate and nature health, and that the health of the soil, the health of plants, people and animals is all connected. And we really, in all of our activities that we do today, we still really stay true to those principles. So as you say, my day job is mainly in standards. So making sure that that the standards carry the word organic, represent organic principles of health, ecology, fairness, and care as far as we possibly can. As you'll probably be aware, in most parts of the world, organic is regulated, so it's covered by law. But that doesn't mean that we can't have standards that go higher than the law, and that's one of the things that the Soil Association does. So in areas that are really important, on things like animal welfare, or areas where we think that the law doesn't go far enough, so things like health and beauty and textiles, we develop standards that cover those areas, so that when consumers buy the organic product in store, they can have some assurance that it covers really meaningful requirements. And also, it's not just about consumers, it's having a regulated sector and having standards is really important for policymakers to be able to have a kind of off-the-shelf thing that they can support that really furthers their aims with regards to things like climate change, biodiversity loss, and thriving rural livelihoods. So this is one of the things that's so great, and why I'm so passionate about organic and the organic movement and organic standards, is that it covers so much. It's not just about carbon, it's not just about water, it's not just about biodiversity, it's about all of those things. And that kind of Swiss Army knife approach, as I've heard it called, is a really valuable aspect of organic agriculture and the organic movement around the world.
And actually, I like the word, the Swiss Army style approach, because that's exactly what the Soil Association is. And if people go onto the website and have a look at the amount of campaigns. It really is a Swiss Army knife. This is the People's Food Summit, and I noticed that the first campaign at the moment is a campaign against junk food, which I think is really necessary. And this is something that, how can you say, it's not just an organic issue. It's an issue that really affects everyone, particularly at the moment where we're seeing this incredible growth of ultra-processed food. And unfortunately, the UK, like the USA and my country, the majority of people now are consuming this ultra-processed food, which is really, how you can say, empty calories. In fact, it's nothing but high energy calories, but empty of nutrition. So I was just wondering if you could just, basically talk a little bit about this campaign and how you're getting your messages across in the UK.
Yeah, well, the thing, there's so many different aspects to the challenges and the solutions around so-called UPFs, ultra-processed food. So one of the challenges is around how easy it is and how cheap UPFs are compared to healthy food. So we really looked at how the companies behind UPFs are having influence with policymakers and try to call some of that out, and also called on the government and retailers to do more to supply and provide healthy and sustainable food for people, especially children. So one of the it's not directly our UPF campaign, but it's kind of hand in hand with that. We did a petition about saving our fruit and veg, which was signed by 19,000 people, and that urged the government to back more UK grown produce, because if we can grow things in the UK, it can be more easily provided to schools and hospitals, and also has a link back to the resilience of UK farming. So when we're running these campaigns, we're thinking about all of the different interconnections. So we want the UPFs are a risk to health, and we want to be able to address the health conundrum, but also the environmental issues. So which is by calling for a solution that drives positive outcomes for people and the planet, we're also not only calling out the problem, but pointing to the solution. And that's, we find that that's much more likely to get significant backing. So another example, our Food for Life, our work in Food for Life, which is a big program of work that's linked to more healthy and sustainable food. It was listed as an indicator under 2 of the 6 outcomes in a recent Scottish Government National Food Plan. And that's an example of where the national government is trying to address some issues to do with food production, and we have created a solution that is relatively easy for policymakers and others to kind of take off the shelf and incorporate into their plans for a healthy and sustainable nation. So yeah, that's making those links is really important.
Yeah, what I really liked about what you're talking about is how you're linking the various aspects of food production. It's not just the ultra-processed food. On one level, is a problem for consumers, but for people like myself who are farmers, it's a problem for us, because these tend to be mass-produced commodities that are really cheap, that tend to undercut farmers, and it's very hard for us as family farmers to compete against it. So what I really liked was your campaign to get people in the UK to actually buy British fruit and vegetables from farmers. In other words, eat healthy, but support your local farmers instead of all the
we are
imported.
in the UK. Sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Well, the UK is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, which is kind of, I think, comes as quite a shock to lots of citizens in the UK. And we also have one of the most ultra-processed diets in the UK. And you can think about those two things as being completely separate issues, but they are connected. And one of the important aspects of our work is that we make those connections and find those solutions. And I think, you know, any organization working in the food system, whether it's within your own work or with working with others, it's so important to make those connections. And that is one thing that's great about the organic sector and the organic movement in general, is that it's not about individual organizations to do everything. It's making those connections with like-minded organizations who are on the same journey and trying to deliver a similar vision. And you know, that's what's so great about events like today, is that people will be hearing from organizations and individuals around the world who sort of get that bigger picture, connected vision, and that's really where change happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say how important having these connections with like-minded organizations. That's why we actually started Regeneration International 10 years ago, and we're actually a partnership of over 700 like-minded organizations in over 80 countries on every continent and growing. And we actually use the word partners rather than members, so that we basically regard ourselves as partners of equals, respect each other, and try and help each other achieve our common goals. And working on lots of issues. And the other issue that goes with food is, I suppose, with industrial agriculture, is the damage to the environment. And myself, I'm someone who loves the UK, and I love your countryside, and you drive around, you see these beautiful meadows and lovely rivers and streams. It looks lovely, but those rivers and streams are some of the most polluted in the world due to all the runoff. And you actually have a very good campaign on that to try and restore them.
Yeah, so we running a campaign called Stop Killing Our Rivers. So very much a campaign. And that was really, as you say, we've got these beautiful rivers, especially one of the rivers we focused on was the River Wye, which, imagine beautiful kind of woodlands running down steep-sided valleys. It's a lovely kind of meandering river, but it was turning into a dead zone. And one of the core reasons for that was that huge amounts of industrial chicken manure was running off into the river, and it wasn't being controlled or regulated anywhere near enough. And part of the issue is that it wasn't being looked at in a kind of landscape way. So you can think about individual farms having certain licensing, but you've got to think about these issues collectively. So we ran a campaign, and this is also another important aspect, is that through our work, we try and speak to people as both consumers and citizens. So through our work in organic, we give consumers a way of voting with their wallets. But through our work as citizens, we give a way of speaking to government and speaking to business through campaigns, things like petitions and writing to MPs, to ask for the world that people want. And so with our Stop Killing Rivers campaign, as a result of that, the High Court ruled that chicken manure can be classified as waste. And that means that new intensive chicken farms in Herefordshire, which is within the catchment, they have to have detailed plans now for the safe disposal of chicken waste. And that's one of the things that should help drive the lead to the end of this, industrial scale pollution. And that's also I should say that the Stop Killing Our Rivers campaign is another example where it's important to work with other organizations, some brilliant organizations working on issues to do with river pollution, who are so important to collaborate with, because we have these shared aims and intentions, and it's by working together that we can drive real change. And it's always great with a campaign to be able to see, you've got this issue that is a problem, you can bring people with you to advocate for a solution, and then you can see some of those solutions driving through to policy change. That's really the holy grail.
Yeah, the other thing I liked about your about the campaign is the Swiss Army knife style approach, or the connectedness, is also the campaign on reducing the numbers of industrial chicken production in the UK. I thought that was a really important issue to get across. So, because it's one thing is the manure, but I think with the issue of animal cruelty is a really important one when it comes to our systems and what we need to get across to consumers. I think I've lost you, Sarah, have we?
Yeah, and
Sarah,
hello.
we had a little bit of trouble with the internet, but just I'll repeat the question again. That you had, along with the Rivers campaign, you also had the one of reducing the numbers of industrially produced chicken as a way of reducing the problem. And that also fits in very strongly with the whole idea of, I suppose you could say, reducing industrial factory farmed animals and the issue of animal cruelty as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think what is becoming more and more apparent is that in order to be able to feed a growing population sustainably, it's not just about how the food is produced, but also what we're eating. And like crudely, in the world today, about a third of food is wasted, a third goes to animal production, and a third is what's actually consumed. So we don't have a problem with feeding the world, we have a problem with our food system. And so making shifts in the kind of food and what's available and what's normal and how diet works is really important as well. And so, this kind of producing more and more industrial chicken is not going to solve the climate crisis. It's not going to stop biodiversity collapse. And in fact, for the UK, a lot of what we're doing there is offshoring a lot of our problems. So, the animal feed for that huge scale industrial chicken production is coming from the Amazon. It's coming from other parts of the world. And it's, we've got a moral obligation not to just offshore all the damage to different parts of the world. The UK has a history of behaving in that way, and it's got to stop. And so part of a sustainable agroecological future is about producing more locally, more appropriate food, and having less but better meat in our diets.
Look, yeah, what you're saying is really important there, and we'll just touch on the issue of where the food comes from. Most of the deforestation in the Mato Grosso, and then now going into the Amazon, Latin America, is to make GMO soy and GMO corn, and that goes in big boats to Europe, not just the UK, but also to China, and it goes into the factories. And it's actually the most, one side we've got all the forest, which is being unsustainably cleared and contributing to climate change and loss of biodiversity. But the other side of it is that for every 10 kilograms, 10 pounds of plant protein, we produce 1 kilogram or 1 pound of animal protein. It is completely unsustainable. It's a complete waste of food. It's on every level, there is no justification for it. The only justification is it makes a few corporations trillions.
Yeah, and just on that point about meat production, sometimes we use the phrase "it's not the cow, it's the how."
Yeah.
So it's never it's not necessarily a blanket issue with meat production. In fact, there's a good case to say that animals are part of a healthy, especially in an organic system, because you don't have that input fertility. But paying attention to where the food's coming from, how the meat is being produced is so important. And that's really, again, going back to our kind of origins. It's thinking about how food is produced and how it fits within the natural systems and cycles of nature is really fundamental. And that concept has really stood the test of time. And in fact, it's having its day, because it's not. The Soil Association started as a bit of a niche organization with some people who were considered to be widows or cranks, trying a bit of an experiment. And now the organic movement is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's not stopping. And its time is now, and that's so it's a really exciting time. And I know that you feel the same, to be involved. Like, what an amazing movement to be part of,
isn't it? I just want to say too, it's not the cow, it's the how. From our point of view, people should only eat. And we're not anti-meat, and we very much believe that animals. Well, how can you say? For a start, what people eat is their choice. We're not going to advocate one way or the other, but we do believe that meat production or animal production should be done humanely on pastures, and animals should be able to freely express themselves and never be treated cruelly. And I just want to say that is actually really a part of most organic standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are really the kind of fundamental building blocks of organic animal husbandry standards, and it's so important that they are upheld in the face of increasing industrialization of our animal production. There is, what we're seeing is a push for almost more intensification of livestock production to drive down costs and to seemingly contain impact. But in fact, a lot of the time it's just pushing the impact to different parts of the world, which it would do if you don't think about these things as an interconnected system.
Yeah.
But just on the role of kind of meat in diet, which we've kind of gone onto a little bit, another area of work that we're involved in is looking at food in schools. So with the understanding that eating habits start very young, and it's really important that all children have access to healthy and sustainable diets. And school food is a really great way of ensuring that happens. So we've done quite a lot of work over the years through our Food for Life program, especially a scheme called Food for Life Served Here, to bring healthy and sustainable food to school children. And that also is an issue of equity. So every child in the UK can have a healthy and sustainable meal. That's kind of our goal. And today we've got 1.5 million freshly prepared meals now served daily in schools across the UK. And there's different levels to that scheme. But one of the aspects of the work is to think about how menus are designed. And we've seen from other parts of the world, as well as in the UK, that if you incorporate more beans and pulses into a meal, you can reduce the meat content, which reduces the cost. And so it means that the children are getting a more varied diet, but also you're reducing some of those environmental impacts of the food that's produced. And, that's just a win-win all round, really.
Yeah. I just want to say too that having these diets for children at school, I just think so important, because most of them, if you have a look at what's in their lunchbox or what's in the cafeteria at school, it's usually junk food. It's sugar and carbohydrates, very little nutrition. And what is important about this is that children not only get to eat good food, they get to learn about it. They get to actually know that this is natural and normal. And the other side of it is that these are really good markets for local farmers. It actually helps farmers rather than going to supermarkets and places where we get ripped off. These are supply chains where we can get a fair price, and it supports our communities. So to me, this is a real win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we have a program. I love it because I love a pun, and it's called Give Peas a Chance. And it was in Scotland, and it was working with an organic farmer who was growing peas, and they became the supplier to a local school, or actually a series of schools. And it was like a pilot scheme to that's benefited on both sides. So it gives the farmer, as you say, a stable and accessible market for organic produce, and it gives the school a really fresh and healthy and sustainable food as part of their school meal. And the program is interesting also because it really involved and worked closely with the caterer, so that with all of these things, it's never a good idea to impose something on a supply chain or in a new scenario. You have to bring people with you on the journey, and the catering team got involved in the menu design. The children also were involved in order to kind of like socialize the idea of having this thing within the meals. And because of that connection, because of bringing people together in that way, it's been a really big success. So yeah, Give Peas a Chance is a nice program to check out, and that's the kind of thing that we want to be doing more and more of in the UK. We've got plenty of ideas. It's just bringing them to life.
Well, Sarah, I just think that's a wonderful way to end this conversation. What you guys are doing is just incredible on so many levels. It's really inspiring, and I just think it's incredible that after 80 years you're growing from strength to strength. A lot of organizations just sort of implode and disappear, and you guys are up there growing and having such an important influence in the UK. And I really hope that the people who are watching this go online and Google the UK Soil Association and just see the myriad of incredible things you're going. So thank you, Sarah.
Great. Thank you very much, Andre. Yeah, we'll be very happy to speak to anyone who's interested in supporting our work or working with us on some of these projects. So yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and really nice to be able to talk about the work that we're doing. And wishing you all the very best.
You too. The pleasure's mine. Ciao.